Hello, Tavarish. I'm glad you're first, and I got the Lord of Thunder Raiden here. Well, Simpin, I'm just telling you the verdict. Great to have a conversation about it. And this is a conversation due to the fact that I also finished the law school, although Romanian law is so much different than American law. Um, Night and day difference. I mean, it's completely different legal systems. I can't say that Romanian law is better than U.S. law. They both have their ups and downs. I mean, it's okay. So like for example, in Romania, we don't have jury, we have a judge, and depending on the court you're at, like you get like multiple levels of court. Like the lowest one is the court, then you go to a tribunal, and then there's another one above that, and another one above that is the Supreme Court, and you just get more judges as you go up. So the first one, judecătorie, so like the lowest has one judge, and then when you go a little bit upwards, you get three judges, then you get five, and the Supreme Court, I believe, has nine. And the judges are the ones that pass the decision, right? They are the ones that not only just pass the sentence, but also the punishment. And I suppose like the positive side of it is that um, we don't have like the plea deals that Americans have. Like you do have a lot of innocent people, and I know cases where they do take the plea bargain and they go to prison, especially if it's a very young and easy to influence person, right? Which let's say he was caught with something, but the prosecutor goes like, look, either you take the plea deal and you get time, but not a lot of time, or if you go to court, you can get like 40 years or some shit. So there are a lot of cases in the U.S. where, especially poor people that can't afford a lawyer, they're just going to take the plea deal. So I get that. We don't have this here. It's really bizarre. I get it. It speeds things up, so trials go a lot faster, but I wouldn't call it necessarily a good thing. And the jury. The jury is also interesting because, from what I understand, the jury is supposed to be not. I mean, yeah, impartial is the word, but they're also supposed to be isolated from outside news. So if for example they're trialing, in this particular case, the case of Floyd, that they're supposed to not watch the news, they're supposed to not watch CNN, they're supposed to not watch Fox News, they're supposed to just keep themselves only to the facts presented in the courtroom. And the judge said that this is not something that can be done anymore because in the era of the internet you can't just avoid hearing about the case. And I kind of get it, like the Floyd case was everywhere. But when you have like left-leaning prosecutors, right, and they're out there and they're saying, yeah, you get people like Maxine Waters, and they're saying, if the verdict isn't guilty, then what you need to do is become more confrontational, right? Like she tells this to the protesters that have been um, burning the city for the last couple of days, and like more confrontational than that. Right? Like what does she mean? But that's not the only thing. Like the New York Times also released an article, like talking about the jury. Let me see if I can find it. I mean, New York Times is a literal propaganda right now. It's kind of funny because all social media has to make sure that people like me don't incite to violence. And by the way, like I would never incite to violence because I just want to entertain people. I don't want. But like if any of my subscribers were to do something bad, I mean, the media would crucify me, right? But the New York Times is actively advocating for violence constantly. Like it's insane, I guess it's about power. Like they have the power to do these things, and they realize that okay, well, our biggest enemy is citizen journalism, like someone from their own house talking about the news. And we need to make sure that what they say is controlled, which is why they pressured the social media companies to have like terms of service to make sure that no one is inciting to violence. Even though like it's so broad, it is so broad. Like I've seen YouTubers being banned for jokes, having their channels terminated because they said something edgy, without even violence happening, right? But it's the umbrella. It's like, oh yeah, we need to protect them. So New York Times, they had a very interesting article. Don't know if I can find it, but it was something like this. Who are the jurors seated in the case? Right? Um, yeah, I can't show it to you because when I go here, it's like this. But the article was something like trial section 12 jurors seated in the case. I think like this is the one. But it was like who are the jurors? Like let's look into them. Let's see who these people are. Let's analyze. Clearly not trying to intimidate people or anything like that. Thank you for the donation, Bear. But I just want to point out that Milo Yiannopoulos got banned for that edgy joke. So he lost his PayPal, so just putting it out there. Yeah, so like this is an interesting thing. It's like when you have the media, especially like I looked at how CNN was reporting, and I think it was Fox News as well. Like they were basically saying that anything else besides a guilty verdict is going to get people to riot. Right? Like that was the narrative. So if you're a person in the jury and you're thinking like, oh shit, like I have a decision to make. I can either decide to I suppose, give the verdict not guilty. Or if I give guilty, then a lot of people are going to suffer. I mean, houses are going to be broken down, businesses are going to be ruined. I can have activists coming at my home, right? So, are there grounds for an appeal? I think yes. And I think the judge also said the same thing because of what Maxine Waters has said. Like, if Maxine Waters would have shut the fuck up, I think this would have been a clear ended case. You know, it's like, oh well, there might be an appeal, but no chance of them overthrowing it. Well, thank you, Bear, for the donation. And you know what I think the main problems are, and I'll tell you the issue with the United States culture right now. It's not the policing. It's not. Okay. I read recently Thomas Sowell, and in his book, he talks about two major power outages in New York City. The first power outage happens in the 60s, and despite the fact that there was a massive power outage, the level of crime within that night was lower than usual. And then a couple of years later, around a decade or so, another power outage happens, and you get rioting and looting to huge amounts. Like, it was ridiculous. I think they even made a movie based on it. So Thomas Sowell tries to wonder, like, why is that a thing? Because like 10 years is not that much. And the thing he believes is the erosion of values, like the erosion of culture. Because what keeps society safe, what keeps anarchy from happening, the first thing is that people have morals and values, and they think that they shouldn't do bad things, right? So religion used to play a role in this. I'm not a religious person, but I can imagine how it is if you're a religious person and you think that you have a video camera focused on you at all time. Like, God watches every action you do. And if you want to steal or if you want to loot something, the first thing you're going to ask is like, can I get away with this? But the second thing is going to be like, oh, God is watching, right? So even though you want to, like, you know it's wrong, like, you know looting is wrong or stealing something is wrong, and you then wonder the next step. It's like, okay, I know it's wrong, but like at the end of the day, I benefit, right? Because I get more money, I get some wealth, right? Like, there are people who have this mental thought process in their head. And he has meant that. And they have this mental process in their head. It's like, yeah, I'm doing something wrong, but it's good because my family gets to benefit. The second question is like, will I get caught, right? So this is like one of the reasons a lot of people don't do it is because they're afraid of the law. But when you have a circumstance like a power outage, you know, like the protest that's keeping the police occupied, a lot of people will go like, right, you know, like I can do it and not get caught. And then there's the third thing that comes up, which is religion. It's like, yeah, but like even if I do it, even if I don't get caught, God still sees it, and I don't want to commit sin, right? So that's what keeps society in order. I think it's like the police can only do so much. You know, like the police cannot actually make sure that every single citizen behaves. So what keeps citizens behaving is values and morality. And recently we noticed a massive erosion of values and morality from blatant communist ideology, I would say, like the idea that property has no value, that human lives are more important than property, even though they're intertwined. Like, how can you put food on the table for you and your family if the business where you work is caught fire? You know, like there's a reason most people don't want to live in impoverished cities where you can't get a job, where the crime rate is high. Like that, all of these things are interconnected. So when you don't care about private property anymore, when you say, fuck this private property, I don't care, it's not important, and you go there and you destroy businesses, you set fire to places, all of that has repercussions, right? And the cops can only do so much. Like, they're not going to stop all of this. Like, they don't have the manpower. Like, and you know, it's like that song from Fake Woke. It's like order food and call the cops, see which gets there first. Obviously, right? So, I think like this is the main problem that exists in the United States now, is that people not only do not care about property, like they think it doesn't matter, that it has no value. And the second reason is that people do not trust each other. You know, like I suppose, you know, the left keeps saying the black community. I don't think there is a community based on race, because it's like, okay, what type of community? Like, a community means, at least in my language, a group of people that live together and share the same values and ideals, right? So like a sort of extended family. If you want, like, you can have a community in a small village, in a small town, you know, like it's a community of people. They live together, they interact with each other constantly. So how can you have a community if you go out in your own neighborhood and you set fire and you loot businesses in that neighborhood? Because what happens is like, okay, well, the people working there are just going to move away. They're going to start their business in another neighborhood, which causes a feedback loop, because now there's more unemployment, there's more poverty, and now there's more crime, right? And eventually, like, there's even less and less businesses there. So now you can't even shop where you work, right? Like where you live, you have to travel long distances to shop. You can't get a job where you live. You get more gangs that are moving in. How is this a community? How does it make sense, you know? But anyway, that's not my point. My point is that whites don't understand race like other ethnicities do. We're not allowed. We can't have an in-group. Of course, white people have an in-group. It's called Antifa. It's David D'Angelo. Like, no. The way I view identity politics, by the way, it's the idea of creating a union based on arbitrary characteristics. And I'm telling you, as a person who lives in Eastern Europe, there are very few things more cancerous than a union. Because, like, the idea of a union is that, okay, all the workers join up and they create a union, right? So you select someone to represent you. But the moment you do that, the person representing you becomes corrupt as fuck. The corporations bribe that person most of the time. So the only people benefiting from the union are the union bosses. Like they're the ones that benefit. Everyone else doesn't benefit from the union. Okay, so why would you do the same shit with ethnicity, race, or any other identity? How many black people benefited because of Al Sharpton? You know, how many people benefit because of their? Do you think the transgender community is better off or worse off because of their activists? But and this is pretty much it. It's like the eternal grift. You now have like unionizing based on identity. It's ridiculous, but it is what it is. You know, and yeah, white people have an identity. It's Antifa. If you want to join that, it's called the Good Whites. It's exactly like during the Mao Communist Revolution, you had the idea of the Good Han. You know, the Good Han was the ethnicity that has like the Han that get it. You know, he gets it. He understands how to behave, and that's pretty much the place for the good ones. Look what Detroit has been before and after the riots. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same shit. It's literally the same shit, right? Like, if there were riots in my town, I would expect poverty to follow. And by the way, from riots, it's the rich people that benefit. Who gets to buy up the empty plots of land at a cheap price? Who gets to buy off all the properties from the people that are fleeing the area? Who gets to, you know, I'll tell you who, the slumlords. You know, in New York, after many businesses closed and people fled, it was politicians that were buying up, you know, the empty buildings. It's sad, you know, and from what I noticed, and I've been looking at this for, I believe, the last 10, 11 months. You have the groups that are anarchists, okay, like people like Antifa. And if you go on YouTube, like there's this documentary about the Sunrise Movement. And the Sunrise Movement are like activists, agitators for Antifa within, I believe it was Portland, but I might be wrong, so I don't want to make a mistake. But what they do is that they create what they like to call proactive organization. So proactive organization means that they map the city, they find out where the police stations are, where the fireman departments are, which are the rich businesses, okay? And then they set up things like they bring bricks next to particular areas, they hold rallies and speeches to energize the mob, and then they wait, right? And in a country with 360 million people, you are going to eventually find an event which gets people to go out and protest. And when people go out and protest, then they call upon their organizers, and they come with different chapters from all around the United States. Usually like people from Portland go to other places, right? And when they get there, they incite the destruction and the damage. And you can see this, like there were video after video after video on Twitter, which got suppressed. And you had like people from that community, like black people, saying like, who are these guys that are destroying our towns? Like, they're not from here. They're not members of this community. Like, they're burning down the businesses that are in the places we live here. And those are, like, in my opinion, the main perpetrators of chaos. Then you also have like the actual poor people that live in those neighborhoods, and they're like, well, you know, like, might as well get a TV, or might as well get some shoes or whatever, because like, hey, you know, like, I can take advantage from the chaos. Those types of people exist even in my town. Like, when we have a protest, or when people have a riot, or if there's some natural disaster, a flood or whatever, yeah, you're going to have like the disenfranchised members of society from the criminal underbelly that are going to take advantage. And, you know, they don't care about the protest, they're not political, but they do go out and they try to rob a store. All right, like, this happens in my country, it happens in every country. But like, these people alone wouldn't be able to cause billions of dollars in damages. Like, that is the difference. You know, like, sure, they go into a store, they take something, because think about it this way. Like, let's assume that the zombie apocalypse is coming, right? And every single person on planet Earth perished, but you managed to survive. How much shit would you be able to carry in one single night? No, seriously, like, think about it, all right? Like, you have the ability to go right now outside in every shopping center you want and pick up whatever you wanted, all right? And you have a night to do it. How much shit, like, legitimately, how much can you pick up? Like, let's say, you know, you carry a big TV. Okay, you need several people to carry it. Like, you probably can't carry it alone, right? You can't use a car, okay? Like, that's part of the rules, because during a riot, you're not going to be able to drive the car properly because the streets are congested or whatever. But usually it kind of takes like 1 hour to go out and get one TV to bring it back into your house, right? Carry it out the stairs and putting it. You're not going to carry much, you know. But that's the thing. It's not the looting that's the problem. Because again, like, the looting wouldn't cause that much damage. It's the destruction of property, the throwing with bricks in the window, the setting fire to the business. That's the worst thing of it. You can pick up a cargo van first. Yeah, but not a lot of people have that, you know, and you need to be realistic. Most people, especially like when you look at the type of person that does this, from the videos that I've seen, it's usually like people on foot that are looting. You know, it's not people with vans, it's not people with cars. I mean, sure, yeah, you can actually pick up a van, and then you have to worry about the license plates because people can take a picture, and I don't know. Imagine looting color TVs in the 80s. Yeah, I mean, in the 80s, you had a lot of expensive electronics. Now they're like, what exactly can you... what exactly can you nick? You know, that's really expensive. Usually, like, the things that are incredibly expensive, like, let's say you want to nick a high expensive computer, like maybe a gaming laptop or something. Usually those are in warehouses, and you can only order them online, at least in my town. Like, I don't know how it's in America, but the high tech, like the high price things, they're not in the stores. So if I want to get like a really expensive, like a $5,000 gaming laptop, I would have to order it online, and then you wait a couple of days until they bring it. Black Lives Matter now, American Taliban. Well, BLM is actually under scrutiny right now because people call it buy large mansions. But that's my point. You know, like that's literally my point. Unionizing based on ethnicity or race or whatever is the same thing like unionizing for jobs. It's just the leaders that get wealthy. That the union boss is the one that benefits. Like I can't think of many examples when unions actually did something good. Like I know so many cases because I had multiple jobs, and I can't think of a single case where you know like this is a good thing. Like being part of this union is excellent. I'm not saying it never. You know, like sometimes maybe, but most of the time unions are there to benefit the union boss. Almost every single time. Minneapolis police should go on strike. I mean, it's getting to the point where I legitimately don't understand why anyone would want to be a cop. Like, there used to be, at least, again, where I live, for a time, there used to be prestige of being a police officer because it's a hard job. You know, it's not like the military, but it's still a very difficult job. I mean, you have to deal with the criminal underbelly. You got to deal with rapists and murderers, and you're not getting a lot of gratitude for it. You know, like no one is going to thank you for your service because you're arresting them. So, you know, like being a police officer is a job that's inherently difficult by itself. And then you deal with the bureaucracy and the corruption and all of the nasty things. And, you know, it makes you cynical and jaded. And on top of that, right, you can get shot, like you risk your life. And then you get like another level where now the mainstream media hates you, the politicians hate you, the people hate you. Why do you want to be a cop? Oh, and they're also talking about taking money away from the police. I mean, I'm not saying the cops are perfect, but the other solution are gangs. I mean, we live in a time where a member of the Bloods or the Crips has more respect than a police officer. Publicly speaking, okay, a criminal, a gangbanger, right now, like in this moment, has more respect than a police officer in the eyes of the public. I wouldn't be shocked if an MS-13 member has more respect in the eyes of the public than a police officer. It's bizarre, you know. Sometimes they don't have a choice. Some of them do really believe they're going to do something good. I find it difficult. I find it difficult that at this point they believe that this is something good. And yeah, I think cops might resign. President Harris and Biden are making a joint statement now. My God, like, listen to this, okay? Like, this is what Nancy Pelosi has said. I've never heard anything more dumb in my entire life. I don't know how these politicians manage to get reelected, man. Like, it's just, like, listen to this. Tell me if you guys notice anything weird about it.
So again, thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
This is bewildering. How the fuck can you say something like that? He didn't sacrifice, like sacrificing implies willingness to do it. Like there's a consent. You know, like you sacrifice your life when you jump in front of a bullet for someone. You know, you sacrifice your life when you join the military and you go to work. Like you do this voluntarily. You know what you're doing. I'm speechless. Crown virus is a spell that is grooming the blind masses for a top-down totalitarian government. The return of the king is upon us. Get in line, slave. Yeah, I think we are moving back to feudalism. And this is not the only one, by the way. Like this is not the only person which made a dumb statement. Let me see. It's almost like they have like a PR team and they're telling them what to say. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, this is trending on Twitter now. Sacrifice. It's bizarre. I mean, the words don't have meaning anymore. Look at this one. This is the mayor, all right? Like just look. George Floyd came to Minneapolis to better his life, but ultimately his life will have bettered our city. This is like, man, look, if it ever happens that I die, all right, like hopefully it doesn't happen anytime soon. But if I ever die, please, for the love of God, don't say things like this to me. You know, like it's just perhaps she just admitted he OD'd. I don't fucking know, man. It's so bizarre. What do you think led to the social situation we have now? I blame it a lot on legit and awful Bush administration and evangelicals were in the 2000s. So the situation you have now can be blamed on multiple things. As all complex situation, it has a complexity of factors. And yes, I do think that Bush, you know, the piety warriors, created a lot of animosity for themselves. Like it reached to a point where I know a lot of people from the atheist community that were atheists, not because of Christianity or, you know, like they read the Bible and they found something that they disagree with or anything like that. No, they became atheists because they really hated mortal busybodies. I mean, they wanted to watch Harry Potter and the news, the guy on Fox News would tell their parents to stop allowing them to watch Harry Potter because Harry Potter has witches and it's turning kids into warlocks. You couldn't play Dungeons and Dragons because it made you cast spells. You couldn't listen to heavy metal because that was the Satan's music. Everything on TV was sanitized, like mommy was there. You know, you couldn't have any curse words or swearing, and it's this attitude that got a lot of people upset with religion because they didn't understand. They were like, look, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not hurting anyone. Why are you treating like I'm destroying the world? That's one factor. But I think like the most important factor, like the number one reason why we are where we are, is because of the long march through the academia. So the long march through the academia is something planned by Herbert Marcuse, and this is something that I'm going to talk about in a video on my main channel. But Herbert Marcuse, as well as a lot of people from the Frankfurt School, these were individuals which were Marxists, and initially they started in Germany, right? That's why it's called the Frankfurt School. But since all of them were Jewish, they fled the Nazi persecution and they went into the United States. And I think Herbert Marcuse was actually hired by the intelligence operatives, so the CIA, with the main goal of figuring out the ideology that would root out Nazis from within the US, right? So US goes to war, World War II, right? They didn't want Nazi infiltrators, so they hired Herbert Marcuse, which did a very good job at keeping Nazis out, but he was also a communist, and he did a very poor job at keeping communists out. Now, it's important to point out, like, these individuals, okay, like, they're given safe haven in a different nation. And not only that, but they're treated very well. Like they're very influential. You know, they're allowed to have so much power. And yet Herbert Marcuse despised America. Now it's kind of interesting to know why he despised America. It's the same reason why all of the Frankfurt School people didn't like America, and that is because they believed liberty leads to fascism. Which is kind of funny because the fascists believe the same thing. They believe that liberty leads to communism. But they believe that America is a very oppressive state, and it's already fascist. It's just that fascism has a really good way of disguising itself. Now, the way what I'm going with this, right? Like Herbert Marcuse and other people at the Frankfurt School, they notice that Marxism doesn't happen in the West, and they believe it doesn't happen in the West because people are indoctrinated. They're like in the Matrix, given the blue pill, and they don't notice that they're oppressed. Which means that the oppression needs to be exposed. Like you need people like Herbert Marcuse to show people why they're being oppressed. And he believes that power doesn't come from the government. It's not something that comes top down, but he believes that power is more like a net on society where every person is a node, and power is spread from person to person through cultural means. So the mainstream media, movies, television, comic books, like literally everything like that is what creates culture. So if instead of seizing the means of production, they would seize the means of culture, then they can brainwash people into doing whatever they want. So he talks about, like, since people are, or like since censorship is already happening, because he believes that in America, for example, you wouldn't be able to have like a pure communist film on Hollywood because the public wouldn't allow it. So he believes that because censorship happens, if you censor others, it's fine because you're using censorship as a liberating way. You know, like you're censoring people on the right. And for him, people on the right were pro-capitalist. So by censoring right-wingers, by making sure that they don't get to speak, you are actually liberating people. Now, what's interesting is the reason you saw the COVID riots and you saw the riots in the 60s and all of the violence is because of this man, is because of Herbert Marcuse, by creating the idea, which was then passed on through other thinkers, that of repressive tolerance. So repressive tolerance, he actually talks about the fact that you are supposed to tolerate anything from leftist groups. So this includes violence, this includes criminal activity. Like no matter what the leftist does, it should be tolerated. On the other hand, no matter what a right-winger does, so we're talking even like just matter of discourse, just like people talking, that should not be tolerated at all. And this explains why Trump rallies were super spreaders and riots were free to go, like mostly peaceful riots. This explains why, for example, when Ashley Babbitt gets shot, it's like, like the cop isn't even going to get charged. Something else happened, mainstream attention, blah, 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 blah. A recent event, this happened yesterday. There was a shooting. Like the police shot the carjacker, and BLM took a knee, and they started protesting and blah, 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 until they found out that the guy was white. And then they stopped. Because repressive tolerance, anything that the left does needs to be tolerated, and even if it's illegal, anything the right does needs to be heavily suppressed. So, yeah, I mean, let's see if I can find it. Marcuse argued that because of the radical repressiveness of Western society, so he believes, again, that Western society brainwashes people to vote against their interest. So this is why I don't have Marxism. It's because the worker is brainwashed. Like, he doesn't know he's being oppressed. And because of that, a tolerance for all viewpoints is what causes this social oppression, right? Because we allow people to be confused. Like, by allowing a couple of right-wingers to go there and talk about, their nonsense, confuses people. So in order for people to be liberated, we have to censor anything that right-wingers do. Oh, you got some right-wingers protesting against the COVID measures? Shut them down. Terminate their videos. Proactively censor them. Shut down Parler. Even if they didn't do anything, they might. So we need to censor them before they can even get their message across. Because if people don't hear it, they don't think. If people don't think, they're not confused. A pervasive network of assumption and biases implicit privileges the viewpoints of the powerful, so that seemingly equal representation of opposite opinions actually end up benefiting the viewpoints of the powerful. This is kind of funny, because when Marcuse lived, it was true. Like most views were pushed on television, right? So If you wanted to get a message across, people with newspapers, people with media, they would be the ones that would push the view. But then the internet happened, and literally every single view was equal. Like it didn't matter who you were. You posted something initially, right, on Reddit, for example. People liked your post, and they would click the upvote, and it goes all the way up, right? That was exactly, what Herbert Marcuse would consider to be an equal system. But what ends up happening is that the powerful step in. So the Reddit administrators, right, and they're like, oh, no, we can't have that. We need censorship. We can't let people talk freely. Newspapers, they remove the comment section, so on and so forth. He offered the example of a magazine running a piece criticizing the FBI along with one praising the FBI. Fair and balanced, not so fast. The chances are that the positive story wins because the image of the FBI is deeply engraved in the mind of the people because of social programming. The inhabitants of given society automatically favor certain values. The ideological playing field lack of levelness means that seemingly equal presentations of ideas are not actually equal. So what he talks here is like the importance of co-opting every single institution and subverting it. So if you look at Oscars, right? Like what are the Oscars? It used to be a prestigious award, at least when I grew up. Like I don't know if this actually was in the United States, but when I grew up, the Oscars were a really big thing. Like my family would gather up and they would see like, let's see who won the Oscars, and blah, blah. Because the Oscars carried prestige, right? Well, now that it's influenced by the woke, it loses its value because like they're like, oh, Oscars too white, blah blah blah, and you didn't know if a prize now goes to someone because of merit or because of ideological reasons. But what's interesting is that they use, like for example, the United Nations is the perfect example. The Human Rights Commission, criticizing the United States for human rights abuses or whatnot. Most people, that normal people in their mind, they hold the UN in certain prestige. So they view this as like the decision of the UN has more weight because it comes from the UN. And this is why like people like Herbert Marcuse says, look, if we can co-opt these prestigious organizations, it's better than if we just create our own. So instead of like creating another organization that would give prizes to movies, they would rather co-opt the Oscars because they can then wear the prestige of the organization like a husk. I used to be extremely left in first grade. I got yelled by a teacher and told, you don't kiss boy, because I got too close to him and smiled. That was 2002. I mean, that's what Marcuse is talking about, right? Like in 2002, it was ingrained in your mind from a person of authority that you don't kiss boy, and because of that, you're not liberated, because you don't know how you would have acted if that teacher didn't say that to you. Time to learn how to survive in an authoritarian state. This is starting to feel like being back in Zimbabwe, where justice is what the state wants. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Romania as well. Like the thing which really shocked me, to be honest, was the Epstein case. Okay? Now the Epstein case, the reason it's so surreal and it made me lose faith in the system that I held in high regard, which is the American justice system. Like you got a guy committing a crime that's not political in nature. Okay, like the guy wasn't trying to feed the homeless. He wasn't, trying to smuggle poor people into a no. Like the guy raped children. Right? Like it's really fucked up. Like everyone can agree, whether you're on the left or on the right or like apolitical. You can say, like yeah, okay, fucking not okay. And you get this guy in prison, right? And then allegedly he commits suicide while the cameras are off and the guards are asleep. It's kind of bizarre, and you have like left-wing journalists on Twitter, like from the New York Times and from other publications, agreeing with right-wing journalists that yeah, this is a little bit fucked up. Like no one is buying this. And notice how no investigation is made. Absolutely nothing. Like no one looked into it. No one is even caring about it. Like nah. But it even gets worse because I believe it was ABC News. They had a leak where one of their anchors was caught on a hot mic talking about how she is so pissed off because 2 years ago she interviewed one of the alleged victims of Epstein, and there was a very interesting interview. And she couldn't air it because the network didn't allow her. And now ABC News is firing the person they thought responsible for leaking that tape. So they're not firing the manager, which took the decision not to air that 2 years ago, which would have been really good journalist work. No. Like that's not the problem. No, the problem is like who leaked the tape to the public with the anchor on the hot mic complaining about that. Thoughts on the Death Note anime? I loved it overall, but personal hated how Light got caught and how young Nier is ruins the suspension of disbelief. I liked the Death Note all the way up until part 2, I guess. Like I really liked it until Light died. After Light died, I think it became a meh show. Verisat says that it wasn't even the woman that leaked the video and it was fired from CBS. Yeah, I mean, Megyn Kelly also has like her first YouTube video exposing that story. So it's very upsetting. And I think like everything comes from this guy, Herbert Marcuse. So his remedy is the withdrawal of toleration of speech and assembly from groups and movements which promote aggressive politics, armament, chauvinism, discrimination on the grounds of race, religion, or which oppose the extension of public services, social security, medical care, etc. And this is what you notice now, right? Like, there is no more two sides of the same issue. Like, did you notice this on the internet, right? Like pro-life, pro-choice. No, there isn't that. Like, any single issue now has a correct stance and the stance that needs to be suppressed. Because this is something that really bewilders me, right? Like, when you look in the United States, the left completely won the argument legally on abortions. I mean, it's in the Constitution, right? You get the Roe v. Wade thing. You get the biggest number of people that I see, they agree with abortion and whatnot. So they won the argument legally, like they got what they wanted, and that's still not enough. Like they're going after people who are pro-life. Like the SPLC is targeting these organizations, causing banks to shut down their accounts, to get social media to ban them. And, like Facebook constantly bans these pro-life groups from its platform. Like, why you do this? Well, like you won. Why do you have to shut up to go on and do a drive-by next to the survivors? You know, and it's just one example. Okay, it's not just pro-life, pro-choice, but like literally every single controversy, you get to see that there is a correct side and the people who are wrong. It's not two sides of the same issue. Transgender kids is now the hot topic, or women in sports. You know, transgender women in sports, or blah blah blah. Like you get to see what happens if you do not have the correct stance. I mean, look what happened to J.K. Rowling. I keep giving her as an example because everyone knows who she is, famous person, and is a very progressive woman. But this is why, you know, it's repressive tolerance. Moreover, the restoration of freedom of thought may necessitate new and right restrictions on teaching and practices in the educational institutions, which by their very methods and concepts serve to enclose the mind with the established universe of discourse and behavior. And this is like a lot of activists took from this from Marcuse. You know, when you have like usually it was like a very obnoxious feminist that would say like, why should I be civil? You know, like civility is a patriarchal concept or whatnot. Now, it's kind of hilarious because if you were to go to her and call her a cunt, because like, well, I don't want to be patriarchy, so therefore I don't need to be civil, she would freak out. Like she would get you fired. So you have to be civil. Why they don't? You know, like literally they're saying like, no, all these institutions that are training you to be civil and lawful and law-abiding and have a no, you do not have a conversation. You do not tolerate and you get aggressive. You know, the Maxine Waters is like, you need to be protesters need to be more aggressive, blah blah blah, more confrontational. So yeah, and to the degree to which freedom of thought involves the struggle against inhumanity, restoration of such freedom would also imply tolerance towards scientific research in the interest of deadly deterrence of abnormal human endurance under inhumane conditions. So yeah, like this is the guy. Like literally, he concocted this. Like he was very famous in his time. He was like the super Marxist, if you will, the PewDiePie of Marxism. A lot of other academics took from his work, and yeah, like what you're seeing here is literally because of him. No, I don't want thumbs up because I'll probably delete this. Oh, am I ignoring Super Chat? Remember Russiagate being a nothing burger. It's not just Russiagate. I mean, you have CNN talking about the handshaky thing. Basically, the guy was admitting to the fact that there was this story with Trump trying to drink a glass of water. Let me see if I can find it. So, Trump glass of water. It's like the 2 scoops of ice cream, right? So, you get like Trump drinking a glass. Let me see, like when they're not making fun. Okay, yeah, like this. That's it. You know, like 3 seconds. And this was on the news for, I believe, 2 weeks to a month. And they were saying it's like, look, because he uses 2 hands, and because the hands are shaking, he's probably suffering from some neurological disorder. And they brought a lot of doctors in order to, like, you know, agree with them that, yeah, neurological disorder. And it's another one with the ramp. Let me see if I can manage to bypass the ad. Yeah, the ramp, right? Where Trump is walking the ramp down slowly. So they're like, oh yeah, my God, like he's getting really sick. Like this is neurological. Like he's going to suffer brain damage because of it. And yeah, like here, you know. So the guy in Project Veritas from CNN says like, yeah, no, this is bullshit. Like we made it up, and we got doctors to say what we wanted, and blah blah blah. So like the Russiagate being a nothing burger is one thing. Another thing is the Russia, what was it, like the bounty on the soldiers. Like Putin put bounty on soldiers. Like they got a source, they got an anonymous source, and because of that, you couldn't pull troops out of Afghanistan. And by the way, here's the most dangerous issue that I'm seeing right now. You got the U.S. getting very aggressive with Russia, you know, taking a firm stance on Russia. And they're also taking they're walking into a dangerous situation with China as well. So like what? Do they want a war on 2 fronts? I mean, I guess they could, because the U.S. is the only nation in the world that could actually wage a war on 2 continents. But then you look and you notice that inside the U.S., you also have rioting, and, you know, like it's not a nation that's united inside. What the fuck are they doing? You know, it's just like really bizarre. The left were only pretending to hate Trump. Well, I think like Trump actually posted on social media once that they're not after me, they're after you, but I'm just in their way. I'm just sitting in their way. So I guess it was kind of true. Like you notice the articles coming up after Trump lost office. It's like, oh, we need to hold the people that voted for Trump accountable and blah, blah, blah. Romanians know what happens when you attack Russia. They got nukes, you know, like that's the main issue. It's the way we wage war in modern time isn't the same way war has been waged throughout human history. So the thing that I'm trying to get here is that now in a couple of days you can reach Moscow. Right? Like today's blitzkrieg is incredibly fast. So the Russian cold wouldn't even be a problem anymore. Right? But they have nukes. Okay, and it's a different thing, like because America, you know, like you keep saying, oh, perpetual war. Yeah, it's one thing when you go and you bully a couple of people that don't really have the technology to resist you. And it's another thing when you go to war with a nation that has nukes. And they do have the technology to resist you. Now, I don't know if Russia, I don't know the military they have and if they could actually hold off an American invasion or whatever, but they would still be able to put up a fight. I mean, it wouldn't be just like going into Afghanistan or Iraq or Somalia or whatever. Greetings from the Czech Republic. Have you followed the Russia thing and how they excuse not dealing with Rosatom? No, I haven't really followed it. I know that the situation on the Ukrainian border is becoming a little bit tensed, and a lot of people are asking like, why does the U.S. Have to defend Ukraine? And there is a reason why the U.S. Is legally obliged to defend Ukraine, even though, well, it's probably not good for world peace, but it's a very complicated situation. You see, Ukraine for a while was the number 3, I believe, nuclear power in the world. So what I mean by this is that of the entirety nukes that we have in the world right now, 90% of them are owned by just several countries. And at the time, it was the United States, it was Russia, I mean the USSR, and I think like France, the UK, like it was just a couple of nations that had nukes. The problem was that once the USSR disbanded, a lot of nukes went into satellite states of the USSR because that's where they were at the time of the USSR going down. And Ukraine became the world's 3rd most nuclear superpower. And that was because they had a lot of nukes on their territory. The main problem was that the Americans and the Russians didn't want that, so they had to negotiate. And both the Americans and the Russians told Ukraine that if you give us the nukes, we are going to guarantee your independence and your territorial integrity, right? So you don't need nukes, the Russians and the Americans told Ukraine, because we're going to make sure that no one invades you. We're going to make sure that your territory is going to be respected. And we know how that went, right? So the problem is that international agreements are kind of like a gentleman's agreement. Like if you break an international treaty, especially if you're a strong nation like the US, there's no one that can hold you accountable. Like there is no Supreme Court that can inflict decisions upon you. So most nations, if they see that you're breaking contracts and you're not following up on what you promised, then they're not going to deal with you in the future. So it affects your international prestige. It affects your international reputation. And this is why I think that the United States genuinely cares about Ukraine. I don't understand like why they care about Afghanistan and Iraq though. Like the last reason that I heard about why America should remain in Iraq is because, and I'm not making this up, but it's because of feminism. Because if America pulls out from Iraq, then women's rights in Iraq is going to be sent back. I don't know what the fuck that means, but like I guess we're going to bomb people to progress now. Like it's kind of bizarre, they're for multiculturalism, but I guess like everyone needs to have American culture. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not the one to defend gender roles within Afghanistan, but I think there's a better way of persuading people than to bomb them and to drone strike them and to have soldiers on their land. I mean, a better example would have been if we leave from Afghanistan, then Iran's field of influence will grow. Like that would actually be more palatable. But I guess like the way America usually deals with regarding foreign policy is that they constantly lie to their people, right? So America isn't going to say, yeah, we need Syria because there's a gas pipeline and it's an economical thing and blah, blah, blah. No, they will say, oh, we're going there because Bashar al-Assad is gassing his people and we don't like that because he's a dictator and he's bad to his people. Like every single time they make up bullshit for their words. And I think it's like, okay, well, what's popular with the people now? It's feminism. All right, well, if we leave Afghanistan, then women's rights in Afghanistan will suffer. Instead of just flat out saying, it's like, no, we need Afghanistan because otherwise Iran grows in influence. Like that's literally it. That's the reason they're there. Liberal democracy always spreads more by the sword than by votes. Yeah, but liberal democracy also, and not all the time, but they have a better track record at winning wars. Like that's also an interesting thing. Communists, though, also have a good track record at winning wars. I guess when you treat your people like the Zerg and you really don't care about their living conditions, then yeah, probably like imagine this, if you're in a communist nation and you don't have electricity and water, then going to war isn't really a downgrade of your lifestyle. Then if you're an American and you have like access to McDonald's and video games and now you have to go in the trenches, like that's probably a huge cultural shock. Which is why communist soldiers throughout history fared a little bit better during warfare. Women had more rights during the pro-Soviet regime. That is correct. Yeah, I'm not going to say that the pro-Soviet regime was bad for everyone. Although you kind of have to wonder, like in my country, the right to abortion was taken away, but women were forced to work, so you didn't have the choice to just be a stay-at-home wife, because that would be what the communists called a social parasite. So the Western world needs additional green pylons. Oh yeah, here's something that I want to talk in a video on my main channel. The reason the green activists freak the fuck out about like, no, we need it now, we need it now, like we need measures now, damn it, like the earth is dying, your house is on fire, we need green energy now. I think that the reason for this is that a lot of nations are becoming green without the green activists. Like America under Trump actually reduced its carbon emissions. Texas is becoming green without the help of socialists and AOC. So you have a lot of people that are buying electric cars. You have a lot of people that I know who prefer bicycling rather than going to work with a car. You have green energy being constructed, windmills, solar panels, and the technology is constantly advancing. And for example, in Romania, there's a lot more emphasis on hydraulic energy. So what ends up happening is that the people, the environmentalists, which most of them are socialists, their solution is big government, huge taxation, and put them in charge, right? So the window is literally shrinking because in the future, their platform is taken away from them. Like if countries go green without their help, without the Green New Deal, and just people choose greener energy, then they lose their platform. It's very similar to white nationalists who freak out because of the demographic changes. Because, like, yeah, if the demographic changes to the point where you don't really have your, I guess, like your supporters because they don't exist ethnically, then yeah, you. So it's literally the same reason why the environmentalists freak the fuck out, and it's like now we need now. Uh, EVs aren't green. EV like what? Windmills or electrical vehicles. Yeah, they're not green, but in the mind of the public, they are. So it also depends. Like if you're in a country where you get your electricity from a nuclear power plant, or you get your electricity from hydraulic energy or whatever, or windmills, then they are actually green. The Satan 2 nuke is a monster. Yeah, I mean, but it's not just nukes. They got so many destructive weapons that a war between two major superpowers would be completely disastrous, unless like they use a gentleman's agreement not to use the weapons, right? So World War One saw the introduction of one of the most the most hideous weapons mankind has ever made up until that point, and that was poison gas. Now imagine inhaling poison gas. Your lungs are liquefying. You're coughing like bits and pieces of your own lung. It's absolutely horrible, right? So I think Hitler got gassed as well, right? Which is why during World War II he didn't use it as a weapon of war. Um, so during World War II, you had a lot of stockpiles of poison gas, and both the British had it and the Germans had huge quantities of it, but they never used it. And it's interesting in the way like the gentleman agreement was formed. It's like, okay, we know you have it and we have it too, but we're not going to deploy it because if we do, then you guys are going to use it. So maybe like if you have something like that, in World War III with the nukes, it's like, yeah, we all have nukes, but I suppose like the only way I would see nukes being used is, let's say you actually have a war, right, between Russia and the US or whatever. And initially, they're probably not going to use it. Same thing, like a gentleman agreement. But then you're going to be like, okay, let's say one side wins, right? So let's say the US is going into Russia, and Russia will be like, okay, enough. If you guys like march past this point, like this is an ultimatum, we're going to launch the nukes. The most terrible weapon conceived by mankind is Marxism. Read up on Grunland Island. Okay, so maybe there are certain places that poison gas was used, and I'm not aware. But that doesn't change the fact that it wasn't widely used in the entire war. So maybe a few places, sure, but it wasn't deployed actively in most theaters of combat. Russia should be bullied into submission. Meh, I don't know. I mean, if I'm going to apply my standards, a lot of nations would be bullied. The Greens push for wind and solar, but hydro is superior. Why don't they push it? Like there is also this thing where you get Marxists who write in their like university professors, right? And they actively write, especially like Herbert Marcuse was writing about this, that they want to collapse what they call liberal democracies. Like that is their main point. Like they want to collapse the imperialist West, the decadent imperialist West. And if you think about it, like throughout human history, the strongest empires were the ones that had the most reliable and best energy. So, for example, the English Empire, right? Like it had access to a lot of coal and steam. The I don't know, like the Roman Empire, it had access to a lot of wood, which was the energy at the time. Um, Now America has access to a lot of oil, right? So if you manage to destroy the energy supply of the nations, then yeah, you collapse the West. You collapse Western democracy. Like if you're saying to America, like you're supposed to use this less efficient energy source, which is solar and wind, and then you tell to China, like China, you're allowed to use whatever the fuck you want. You can use nuclear power, you can use fossil fuels, you can use whatever you want. You destroy the West. Like there is no way the West can compete. And they actually have this bullshit which is called climate justice. Now, if you think about what climate justice is, you think, okay, well, it's about of climate scientists, crunching the data and looking at the numbers. But no, that's not what climate justice is. Climate justice is run by social scientists, right? Which have absolutely no idea about like their expertise on the climate. But they view the world and they say, okay, because of historical reasons, certain nations managed to get a head start. And these nations are the imperialist Western nations, like the US, like the UK. They will not name China, but. And because of the way they got a head start, they have polluted the earth. And by polluting the earth, they cause everyone to suffer. So the greenhorn in Africa is going to suffer from global warming. Certain islands in the Pacific are going to be flooded. And basically, what they're saying is that the nations with more money, like the UK and the US, are going to not only damage everyone on planet Earth, but they're also going to do better than everyone on planet Earth when the damage starts happening because they have more resources and they got more money and technology, right? Like you're not going to expect, I don't know, Zimbabwe to come up with the technology to put the carbon back into the ground. Right? Like I'm telling you what the scientists are saying, like the climate justice. So the climate justice people believe that it's now the duty of the West, like the US and the UK, to not only hold the brunt of what they consider to be reparations, basically like give money to impoverished nations so that they can develop, but also to like allow climate immigrants to come in order to create this climate justice, as well as to stop polluting. So other nations like China or I guess African nations, if they ever get the technology, they should be allowed to pollute because in a way it balances the scales. But America isn't allowed to pollute. In other words, China and like other African nations, they will be allowed to use coal and they will be allowed to use fossil fuels, but America isn't. And these are like the people that are writing agitation and propaganda for the activists, right? Hello, Amak. World War III will happen. Every worst fear we have about the vax and COVID tyranny came true. Now our worst fears about World War III are coming true, possibly. I don't know. I mean, we have a period of time that is called the long peace. And the long peace is ever since the nuke was invented. The policy of mutual assured destruction, um, like it convinces people to not go to war unless it's a proxy war. But there have been a lot of times in the history, in recent history, when we were very close to getting to a war. One of them was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Another one was when I believe one of the Soviets, yeah, like the Soviets radar system malfunctioned, and it was a glitch which told the people in the Soviet military that the US just launched a nuke on them. So there were a lot of hot talks over the red phone, and luckily that situation was resolved. But like you constantly have like these very very tense situation where like you think the world is on the brink, and luckily we have managed to avoid them. Now, whether or not I think this will happen is a little bit more different, because most of the people that are in the American lawmaking system right now, and I'm not just saying the presidency and the Senate, and like everyone that makes political decisions, most of them haven't been to war. And most of them, even if they have been to war, they haven't been to a real war. I mean, they haven't seen the horrors that people saw in World War II, where the balance of forces are somewhat equal, and you get to experience like all of the horrors and the carnage. They may have been to Afghanistan or Iraq, but like that's not a show between two powers that are similar in technology. And because of that, they don't really know. I mean, it's one thing to think you know, and it's another thing when you experience it. And it's not the same people that have been in World War II who knew just how bad war is and tried their best in order to avoid a similar situation with the USSR. Um, Now, because of that, I don't know. Like I don't know how much they will do, and not to mention like technology has advanced, and usually when you have like this is the reason World War One started, is because the technology advanced so much that every country thought they have the hot shit, and every country thought that they have the toys required in order to win a battle really fast. Um, and we know how that happened. Like when World War One started, most of the powers believe that the war will be over in a couple of months, because now they have like they have all this technology and all of these advances, and what ended up was a war that lasted years. It's possible now it would be the same. It's possible that NATO would be like, okay, well, we're just going to steamroll into Russia and we're going to win. But what if Russians have like really, really great anti-air capability, and NATO just, with all the technology, doesn't manage to get into Russia, so it's a stalemate and it's back to trench warfare. Like it's something that's not easily predictable. If you look at World War One and World War Two predictions, all of like a lot of them came up to be false. Most people expected that when Germany is going to go into Russia, the war will be over, and they were basing this expectation on Russia failed invasion of Finland. It, it's very difficult to make claims about how war is like. I mean, what if, let's say, okay, you got a war, and China manages to take out all the American satellites. So now you don't have GPS, now you don't have laser tracking, now communications can't happen. I mean, it would be back to World War II era. So I prefer like just having the long peace continue. Um, they won't fight for now. Yeah, I don't think like America even wants to go to war now. I mean, okay, so you have tensions with China, you have tensions with Russia. And on top of that, you got people openly rioting within the city. Like you have a very, very divisive population right now. You know, you usually know that most civil wars throughout history happens when the nation is busy waging war with foreign enemies, and then you have the uprising that are actually successful inside the country. Wars are almost always won by the side that is more desperate to win. Uh, yeah, no. I mean, it's usually based on morale, yes, but it's also now more based on technology. I mean, there is no way Afghanistan could have won against the U.S. But there isn't, you know, like the technology isn't there. So, but if you reverse the technology, if you give the Afghanistanians the technology of the U.S. and the U.S. have the technology of the Afghanistanians, then well, I think it would be a very short conflict. That's why the US should put nukes in Taiwan. Yeah, I definitely agree, but how do you go around doing that? How do you transport the nukes to Taiwan without them being intercepted by China? Because that's another problem. Like, you know, like you keep saying, oh yeah, just put nukes here or there. It's not so simple. Like you can actually have like your nukes being captured by China, and then you go into a very difficult conflict, both diplomatically and like you would literally have like an open declaration of war then. Like if the nukes manage to get into Taiwan safely, then yeah, sure. But if the delivery of nukes is intercepted, probably hostile relations with China then. Do you think Russia is dangerous anymore? Yeah, of course it's dangerous. Russia is, I believe, like the third military power in the world. Submarine, yeah, you get like technology to detect submarines now. It's not like World War II level. Wars are based on morale even now. Yeah, but like all the morale in the world isn't going to stop a stealth fighter, a stealth bomber. You know, you can't use nukes; they will fuck everything. Well, it depends. I mean, what are you nuking? What what's the purpose? Fly them over on fighter jets? Yeah, you know, like fighter jets can be shot down, right? uh, threaten the Chinese with nuclear annihilation. Well, you do realize the Chinese have nukes as well, so. Do you think Germany is dangerous? Well, the Germans just created the EU. You know, they're pretty influential within the European Union, and they want to create the EU military. So, yeah, and the EU military, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be under closer Germany's supervision. You know, so it's going to be interesting. Yeah, a stealth bomber needs to see its target too. Well, yeah, doesn't it have satellite in order to see the target? Actually, you can shoot down stealth bomber and fighters. Depend what you have, I guess. The elites are just out to get us. Politics isn't about policing the world. Just kick the shit out of the peasants and send them to die. Live in a pod, eat the box. Yeah, like we live in the age, I suppose, of billionaire activists, and the billionaire activists legitimately believe that they are the aristocracy. Now here's the interesting part. And I think like I understand what's the main issue of a lot of and thank you, Emma. I think I understand what's the main issue of a lot of problems that we face today. Every single country in the past had its elites. You know, every single country had its business owners and its influential people. The main problem is that usually those people were having their business in a nation, and because of that, they were very loyal to that nation, right? Because they grew up in that nation. Um, that nation helped them create their business. But now we live in the world of multinational corporations, right? So a multinational corporation doesn't give a shit if the UK goes bankrupt, you know, because they got like 25 other countries they do business in. So these people are more loyal to the empires that they create. I mean, I'm pretty sure Zucker cares more about Amazon than he cares about the United States. Um, and now you have like this conflict of interest, I suppose, and this is why you get to see a lot of billionaires like funding activism that goes against any nation's interests. it's because they're interested in protecting their business first and foremost, and their business is international. So what does that mean? Well, it means they don't want borders, right? Because borders means different laws. You now need to hire a legal team, tariffs, like a lot of nonsense like that. So okay, no borders, so that they can trade easily. They don't care about like if the population likes it or not. They don't give a shit. Like they want cheap labor, you know. So that's why I think a lot of problems are coming. It's you get yeah, Bezos, but Zucker is the same. You know, sorry, my bad. I gave Zucker. I'm a little tired. It's 3 a.m. But Zucker is the same. You know, like he runs Facebook. He doesn't give a shit. You know about like if the if the UK goes bankrupt. I mean, we saw what he did to Australia, right? Like he said, all right, well, I'm going to ban Australia from sharing news sources because he doesn't give a fuck. Like he's got like other countries he can do business with. Um, well, is there rioting happening in in these nations? Like I understand, like Portland, the very progressive city, called on the military now in order to defend them ahead of riots. Like here's something else that's interesting, and Thomas Sowell actually said this. Um, if like in the past when the police showed an active presence and they were locked and loaded, riots didn't happen. But when the police pulled back and it's like, oh, we don't want to get confrontational, then riots happen. But anyway, right, it's 3 a.m. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you for the super chats. And I'm going to try to get some sleep now because I'm very tired and I'm starting to say foolish things. I'm mistaken my Zucker with my Bezos. So, yeah. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow on my main